Hello and welcome back to the Shakey Sonnet Show. I am Tootight Lautrec, the drag laureate of the Sonnetarium, and here we are once again in the Sonnetarium at the bottom of the down staircase in the permanently sequestered remainders section of an unnamed local library which may or may not have a couple of stone lions sitting on the front steps looking like they've just been belched out from the bowels of hell. But they are sitting pretty now, trying to act like nothing really happened. Do they maybe have something in common with our narrator in Sonnets 120 and 121 today? Let's see. Before I begin, I wanted to say again that the joys of reading these sonnets one at a time in isolation are legion. There's the language, there's the ingenuity, there's the humor, and there's the exploration of horribly faulty human behavior. But if we choose to read it as a continuing narrative, which not everyone does, not everyone approves of, but that's my project here. If one chooses to read it as a continuing narrative, the series becomes even more satisfying, or at least it does to me, because it invites us into the creative process of trying to figure out what happened between the sonnets that got us to each sonnet before. We ask ourselves what is happening in this particular sonnet, what may have happened before this sonnet or in between the last sonnet and this sonnet, and what may happen in the sonnet that will follow. So if we take it as a continuing narrative, we've had a pretty rocky road in Sonnets 118 and 119 where there's some excusing going on about bad behavior. And in Sonnets 120 and 121, it does seem like there's been a big knockdown, drag-out fight, or the accumulation of each lover's transgressions has come to a head. And now we're getting real. Real. So let's jump in to Sonnet 120 and see what I'm talking about. Sonnet 120. That you were once unkind befriends me now, and for that sorrow, which I then did feel, needs must I under my transgression bow, unless my nerves were brass or hammered steel. For if you were by my unkindness shaken, as I by yours, ye have passed a hell of time. And I, a tyrant, have no leisure taken to weigh how once I suffered in your crime. Oh, that our night of woe might have remembered my deepest sense how hard true sorrow hits, and soon to you, as you to me then tendered the humble salve which wounded bosom fits. But that your trespass now becomes a fee. Mine ransom yours, and yours must ransom me. So let's look at the first quatrain. That you were once unkind. Once unkind is not really very specific. It could be 3 years ago, it could be 3 months ago, it could be 3 minutes ago, for all we know. All we know is that the narrator knows that the person to whom this is addressed has been unkind, and the sense is pretty clear. That you were once unkind befriends me now, and for that sorrow which I then did feel, needs must I under my transgression bow, unless my nerves were brass or hammered steel. Your unkindness taught me a lesson about pain, and unless I were completely unfeeling, unless my nerves were brass or hammered steel, unless I were completely unfeeling, I couldn't help but notice, but know now how you feel with my transgression. Then we get to the second quatrain. For if you were by my unkindness shaken, as I by yours, ye have passed a hell of time. Now, my unkindness is also somewhat vague. Was it a word? Was it an act? Was it a big act or a small act? Seems to have been a rather big act if he's saying that if it was as bad as you made me feel, you must have had a hell of a time. And, you know, I thought my pain caused I thought your pain caused me a lot of pain. I thought your transgression caused me a lot of pain. Well, here we go. Mine, I'm sure, caused you quite a bit more. A lot, in fact. And I, a tyrant, have no leisure taken to weigh how once I suffered in your crime. So I guess it took him to be hurt in order to understand how he may have hurt his beloved. Third quatrain. Oh, that our night of woe might have remembered. And I have to say I love a third quatrain that begins with an emphatic O. Oh, that our night of woe might have remembered, or reminded me, might have remembered my deepest sense how hard true sorrow hits. Now, he seems to be saying, I wish when we were together that I had remembered how hurt I was when you hurt me, and then maybe I would have made up sooner or better. And soon to you as soon to me then tendered the humble salve which wounded bosom fits. Well, you know, we know how to make up with one another. We know how to lick each other's wounds, as it may be. And then we move straight ahead to the couplet. But that your trespass now becomes a fee. Now, this line 13, but that, has all of the commentators all in a tizzy because they argue about what it means exactly. And I won't go into all the backing and forthing about it, but this is a pretty big but, and we all know I like big butts and I cannot lie. My version of the but is it's almost like an if. And if I were a very cavalier editor, I would put a comma after the that and the trespass, but that, comma, your trespass, so that that is the trespass. But that, your trespass, now becomes a fee. The trespass that you made against me becomes a fee. Mine ransoms yours, and yours must ransom me. We need to make up and we need to forgive one another. So apparently what's good for the gander is good for the gander. Now, I happen to really love this sonnet because it's mature, it's honest, it's vulnerable, and it seems actually quite humble too, even though it's a little bit self-serving because it took the narrator to really understand what hurt felt like in order to be able to understand how hurt the beloved must have been by whatever he did. From that, we move on to Sonnet 121 directly. Sonnet 121. 'Tis better to be vile than vile esteemed, when not to be receives reproach of being, and the just pleasure lost which is so deemed not by our feeling, but by others' seeing. For why should others' false adulterate eyes give salutation to my sportive blood? Or on my frailties, why are frailer spies, which in their wills count bad what I think good? No, I am that I am, and they that level at my abuses reckon up their own. I may be straight, though they themselves be bevel. By their rank thoughts my deeds must not be shown, unless this general evil they maintain. All men are bad, and in their badness reign. So, we seem to get a better glimpse of what the unkindness may have been. And in the very first quatrain, 'tis better to be vile than vile esteemed. If I'm going to be accused of being bad, it might just as better be that I am bad. And whether I'm bad or good, being accused of being bad makes it seem like I am bad. So even if I were good and were accused of being bad, it would seem like I'm bad, but I'm not really bad. But maybe he really is kind of bad. Now, this first quatrain, if read through a homosexual lens, which I just happen to have right here, if read through a homosexual lens, or what we call homosexual, because the word homosexuality didn't really appear in language until perhaps the 19th century. and even then in German. The first occurrence that they can find was coined in 1868 in German, and it didn't make it to dictionaries until the Merriam-Webster New International Dictionary in 1923, which was an American dictionary, and it didn't get into the Oxford English Dictionary until 1933. So the whole idea of homosexuality is, I don't know about the idea, but there was no term for it before. So to say that we're looking at it through a homosexual lens is foisting my own view onto it. But let's just say, since we've seen in the narrative progression, these poems seem to be about and between two men through a same-sex relationship lens, this third and fourth line, and the just pleasure lost which is so deemed, not by our feeling, but by others seeing. It almost seems to say, people just don't understand our love, our feeling. We're in it together. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a homosexual thing either. It could be any kind of love, the good girl and the bad boy, or the bad girl and the good boy. A couple comes together and they say, well, nobody really understands our love. And in a way, this binds them even more closely together. So this could work in that way by saying nobody really understands us. They think that what we're doing is wrong, but it's our love and we know better than they do. In the second quatrain, for why should others' false adulterate eyes give salutation to my sportive blood? So here it devolves from the our in our feeling to the my sportive blood. And so it seems that he may be making an argument to the beloved that, the beloved who we also know has had some sportive blood in the past. But he seems to be calling upon a shared propensity to excuse his own trespasses, to say we all do it. Why should others' false adulterate eyes, people who are looking at me who are doing the same thing I'm doing, why should they even pay attention, give salutation to my sportive blood? Or on my frailties, why are frailer spies, these people who are looking at me and talking about me, they're just as bad as I am, which in their wills count bad what I think good. So we all do it, he seems to be saying, or at least that's one way to read it. Stephen Booth cites a proverb here in these lines where he says that the proverb is, it is an ill thing to be wicked, but worse to be known so. So it's one thing to be bad, but it's quite another to be bad and then to be found out that you are bad. So also in their wills count bad what I think good. I'm not doing anything bad here. The sentiment of it seems to hark back to Sonnet 112, the whole idea of, for what care I who calls me well or ill, so you o'ergreen my bad, my good allow. We shouldn't really care what other people think about what we do, or that people think that what we're doing is bad. The only opinion that matters is mine about you and you about me. And then we move on to the third quatrain. No, which, like Sonnet 120, is a nice emphatic O-sounding beginning of the third quatrain, which I do love. No, I am that I am, and they that level at my abuses reckon up their own. I'm who I am, and other people are foisting their own sins upon me. But this I am that I am, there are a lot of editors who see an echo, or not an echo, but actual verbatim translation from Exodus, where God identifies himself to Moses by saying, I am that I am. And a lot of commentators make a big deal of this, but I don't think it's such a big deal, because all throughout Shakespeare there are examples of him riffing on this whole idea that we are who we are, including in Sonnet 84, where he says, you alone are you. The whole idea that people should mind their own business, they're them, I'm me, you're you, we're us. No need to apply other people's motives to what we do, or to what I do in this case. I may be straight, though they themselves be bevel. By their rank thoughts my deeds must not be shown. Well, it's the same idea, but again, as a 21st century gay American male or drag queen, gay American drag queen, it's hard for me to read words like straight and bevel, which also can mean bent, and bent is another coinage for the term homosexual. It's hard for me to read this without an echo of that in my head. But bevel serves a couple of other purposes here. Number one, it's sort of similar to be vile, which Booth notes. And it's actually an heraldic term that describes a line, a zigzag. So I may be straight, though they themselves be bevel, crooked. By their rank thoughts, my deeds must not be shown. They shouldn't judge me by their own dirty minds. So, the history of the English language doesn't bear out the whole straight and bent and straight and gay thing here, but I can't help but think about it. But whatever may have been happening in this pocket of Elizabethan or Jacobean society from which this sonnet arose, whether it's a rural setting or an urban setting or in Parliament or in the theater or in the court, it seems reliable that infidelity for any kind of a relationship, while recognized as part of human nature, was considered bad. Duh. If only because of the great incidence of venereal diseases that were common in Shakespeare's time. So, the couplet. Unless this general evil they maintain, all men are bad, and in their badness reign or flourish. People talk bad about me are just as bad, and they might just as well say that all men are bad, because guess what? We are. We're all sinners, and nobody's perfect. So, dramatically, no, sorry, male or female. Well, in 121, all men are bad, but I'm not going to honk it because all men could mean humanity. We kind of know that all men may also mean men here, but it's not definitively gendered in this case. Dramatically, the I am that I am echoes variations cited from Othello, from the third part of Henry VI, from Hamlet's What a Piece of Work is Man, and Edmondson and Wells in their book say that there's a dramatic analogy to Iago in Othello for Sonnet 121. I can sort of see that, but it feels like a bit of a stretch. Narratively, again, I want to know what happened between these sonnets. What exactly did the lover or the beloved do that caused so much pain? How is it revealed to one or the other? How did the beloved or the lover react? Other than, well, we know the narrator that reacts in this way by excusing it or philosophizing about it. But in either case, there seem to be many infidelities going on here. Perhaps these two are just two free spirits who live in what we call today an open relationships, and then oops, those silly things called emotions got in the way and mucked everything all up. Perhaps their transgressions were revealed because one of them caught a little something and passed it on to the other. And I did a lot of research. There is a lot about syphilis as it occurs in a lot of Shakespeare's work, and you can look that up on your own for a little late night light reading. I'll leave that to you. But whatever's going on, these two are suffering emotionally. In 35 and 36, 40 through 42, and 92 through 96, all of those sonnets are sonnets in which the narrator claims that this or another beloved has betrayed him. So betrayal is in the air in whatever pocket of society they exist. And it seems that from about 117, let me see if that's correct. Yes, 116 was the Marriage of True Mind sonnets. From 117 through 121, we have a steady drumbeat of woe and betrayal and attempts to right wrongs. And in my mind, I'll take off my gay glasses, but in my mind, 5 sonnets all bent on, I'll fix those later. 5 sonnets all bent on erring or trying to right wrongs doesn't spell success. And it's becoming a little bit painful to watch this slow disintegration of a love relationship, for me at least. So we'll leave our woeful, aching lovers to their own resources for the moment and let them stew in their own misery for one more week. Meanwhile, lift up your heads, look around, find whatever wonder is in your world and pay attention to it, because it's there for you. Until next time, I am Tootight Lautrec. Mwah.